So that's it. This is Nigeria right now. Action. Hello out there, this is Nigeria right now with Dixon Irebo. My guest today, today we have him, Professor Udenta Udenta is our guest today on Nigeria right now.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's really my pleasure.
Thank you.
How's Nigeria been treating you, sir?
I will not say very, as an individual,
Yes.
I thank God for his blessings, in spite of the limitations of the nation space. Not nation, what they call a nation space, which means a space in transition to nationhood. In spite of the limitations and the difficulties and the problems, I'm thankful to God for preserving life. Wider sense of faith of this kind of generational, force field we dwell in, the nation has underwhelmed. And that sense of underwhelmment is not the history of the past 6 years. It's history of post-colonial inheritance from colonialism, from 1960. People cast their mind, if I shock you with this statement, what I can call historical romance or nostalgic romance of the past, good old days. Give us back the Constitution of 1963, the Constitution. All our problems are solved.
You're not going to solve our problem.
I want you to go into research in national archives, some historical documentations, works by brilliant scholars about not just the comment in the street, scholarly comments about that constitution and what led to the coup d'etat.
Researched works.
They negotiated since 62-63. Nobody actually believed in. That's the foundation of our demographics today. National Group crisis of 62, which was believed to be orchestrated from somewhere else. This election of 64 that was a disaster, and then the 65 election in which women became pregnant with ballot papers and ballot boxes. And the slow decomposition of the post-colony was not a factor of 64, 65 alone, but built into the structural and ontological mix that produced the country after colonialism. So when this thing crumbled 66, people heaved a sigh of relief and said, we need something better than what we had. But 50-something years now, we are hankering after that document as if it is unalloyed, document without any problem in it. I don't know how to...
Isn't it because people believe that, we did sit down and agreed that 1963 document happens to be that, the founding fathers sat down to say, okay, these are the rules of engagement, and these are our journey towards nationhood.
Don't think I'm against the 63 Constitution. I'm just saying, as a scholar, as an intellectual, my task is to interrogate reality. It's not to accept authority or conventional wisdom or belief. This 1963 Constitution is far better than the 1999 Constitution by all stretch of imagination. Apart from,
but it's not perfect.
Apart from, as you said, it's an inheritance of autochthonous entities.
Exactly.
What we call indigenous communities. Even at that, let us not be holding, to autochthony and say because indigenous people, autochthonous people, they produce a constitution. If it's a lousy document, it's a lousy document. Now, in Nigeria, as I said, the country today is racked by a lot of pathologies. I describe the country situation as multiple pathologies.
Break it down for us.
But the danger we have in the country is applying correct therapeutics to the particular pathology you're treating. And sometimes I take my reading from Achebek's Arrow of God, when Ezulu, visited by his friend Yakwebwe, said, when a disease visits a community, you look for the animal whose blood matches the potency of that disease. That's why you kill a fowl. If it's a bigger disease, you kill a ram. A much bigger disease, you kill a bull. Issue that stage actors, those elected by the people to confront these difficulties on their behalf, they are not even bothered because people don't put pressure on them. They want to do it themselves. I'll give you concrete examples. Take self-determination. It operates on 3 thresholds, what I call neutralist categories, federalist categories, and separatist categories. To hold election and hold the electoral umpire accountable and to protect your mandate and ensure that every vote counts. and every vote is counted, is self-determination.
That's self-determination in itself.
To ensure the freedom of the press endures in a land, human dignity is respected, constitutional provisions are respected or honored. That is self-determination. So accountability, probity, rule of law, constitutionalism are matters of self-determination. But in Nigeria, they don't consider self-determination. And these matters can be handled by non-state actors, by applying pressure, media petitions, mass actions and mass rallies there that are legitimate and legal. Second one is federalist, which we're talking about restructuring now. You need to rebalance the federation, the federal structure.
Is it rebalance or renegotiate?
Well, renegotiate, rebalance, renovate, reform. Whichever term we love to use. But you see, it is not working. No matter whatever we try, no matter how cosmetic the measures are, we need a whole sum, a whole scale
of rejigging,
of rejigging of this system. That's what means federalist pathologies, which means the constitutional framework is faulty, therefore the structural framework is faulty or disaligned. It requires the labor of those I call democratic intercessors, the governors, the reps, the senators, the state assembly, councillors. They are the people provided by the constitution to represent us, and our duty is to put and hold their feet on fire. So civil society groups, civic empowered spaces must work with these entities in order to ensure. But
aren't we working with these people?
I don't think.
And how far are they carrying out the desires or demands of the people?
I don't think enough pressure is mounted on them at the home front.
Really?
If you look at the social media space, it's 90% Buhari and headsmen and Fulanization and jihadization of the country.
That's the crux of the matter.
That's not applying pressure on the people at that level. If you leave the people, the governors working free, the senators working free, and they're not feeling the heat every minute, then you are bothering Abuja, like you have, for example, every Monday you don't go to work. A court case is coming in October. That case cannot come before October.
Yeah.
And the judge can decide to push it from October to November next year.
So you keep sitting at home.
So he keeps it at home. That's not the way to apply this kind of pressure. I would say they are disaligning and misapplying therapeutics to pathologies. So when you know that you have a senator whose house can be occupied, a reps whose house can be occupied permanently, do not say no to that bill in the National Assembly. We're not going to leave your house. And the government knows the pressure is not on Buhari, whose business is not to hold the feet of legislators on fire. They will even be more circumspect in dealing with the people, because the people are dealing with their own kind. That's the second stage. The final stage is separatist agitation. That's the last level of self-determination. In history, this is led almost in every instance by people who occupy legitimate, constitutionally provided for position in an organized political order.
Prof, it looks like you've taken this thing off the table of the CNC. There's a leader in the land whose duty it is to ensure that the discordant voices and all of that are assembled and attended to.
I agree with you, but the point is that if you have, whether it is a functional federal state or not, people push boundaries to accommodate their own presumptions about life. Take Otom, the governor of Benue.
Yes.
I'm not really talking about individuals, but let's talk about Otom.
Yes.
A letter was written to Chinese, if I'm made to
yes. Yes.
And then the guy who was there, the retired guy, was made to answer, explain what the head was talking about. Why didn't they invite Otom?
He has immunity. He's a
That's the point I'm taking. He's the intercessor. 17 governors today said we're going to have non-open grazing, that is banned to open grazing by 1st today, actually 1st September.
Yes.
Many have complied. Did anybody stop them? Was any gun fired? Was any riot dispersed? Was there any RPGs sent to any of the state houses?
But non-state actors are out there threatening that they were not going to obey that law.
I'm telling you that the moment, at least there's a space provided by the governors for the government to do what they have to do, let it be that non-state actors are not going to respect it. But the point is that as me, you and I form a group, like we have this Indigenous People's Assembly. That is why if you want to protest against a state and you want Nigeria to decompose, like IPOB or one Yoruba nation, you have a right to protest. I agree. Bear a flag in the discipline ceremony.
But within the law.
The law. The moment you begin to arrogate yourself the power of the law, you cannot decapitate the state except with the sanction of organized political order. To do so means you must overwhelm that system with force of arm. So beyond the force of arm, non-state actors cannot implement modalities or frameworks for self-determination. It must be within recognized of an existing order, working with the existing order, changing the mindset of the existing order. Otom was part of APC.
Yes.
He's not radicalized as a governor. The people made it so.
Yes.
So if you want to carry on that kind of agitation, using correct therapeutics to correct pathologies and the level of self-determination, then you must then invoke the existing powers on ground.
Okay. We'll take a break and we'll come back and engage on some of these burning issues in the land. The issue of insecurity and of course the political angle that is also unfolding.
Absolutely.
2023 is on its way. We'll be right back. Professor Udenta is still my guest. There are very serious burning angles to address.
Okay.
Insecurity.
Insecurity.
What is our problem
It's the matter
in
of
Nigeria?
the day. There's a problem in the land. So let me not talk about banditry or kidnapping, abductions, and the terrorist surges in the northeast and elsewhere, and then the separatist agitations in the southeast and the southwest and so on. Let me dwell with the fundamental issue.
Which is?
The point is that you have a lead agency in peace building and peace research and promotion of peace and conflict management called the Institute for Peace, and it's very marginal in the discourse about insecurity in the country. And then it proved wrong after the show.
Failure of
The point
of
there
what,
is
really?
the failure is the way the state categorizes its own, kind of policy options, policy trust and policy executions, modalities. If the institute, which I was a director for 8 years or 9 odd years, a director of internal conflict, having toured this country several times, having studied architecture of the conflict in this country, and that institute is led by bureaucrats who don't have a voice of their own. They're not like very powerful political appointees, governors, senators, etc. So you need to understand the mechanisms of this peace process, and you have to do that through such an agency, which cannot present itself openly to government. But if because it is part of government,
yes.
But if you do not understand its role, and I believe this government of the day, and even the previous ones, except Obasanjo's government, never understood the role of that institute. Because if they do, they will have asked for that strategic conflict assessment document. That document was done with support from DFID, USAID, EU, and World Bank. Every each of this country was studied, analyzed, mapped. Every. And when we started having new threats from 2009 with the execution or death of Yusuf and the death of this Boko Haram,
yes.
To what they have today, what they need to do is to enrich that document and operationalize it using both state and non-state actors.
But these are all academic angles.
What
about the practical political angle? Leadership.
Let me tell you what they're not political angles. The approach to conflict in this country, my own understanding,
yes.
I'm no longer in the system, is very kinetic. It is force of arms. You have your Tupolev, you have your jet, you have your fighter, your helicopter gunship.
Which hasn't helped.
It cannot help. That's why we now bring theory to practice. The first thing you do, no matter how exaggerated the conflict landscape is conflict. You have to do conflict indicators, study the conflict indicators in the northeast, in the northwest, in the southeast, in the south, in the north central. And first and foremost, begin now to leverage on what we tried to do 20 years ago. Early warning. Where do we have a national early warning center? Where do we have a hub in Abuja that integrates reports on a daily basis, hourly basis, minute basis from every location in this country, blinking on computers? This is what is going on in Oshobo, what's going on in Birni Kebbi, what's happening here so now, and somebody is reporting that on the ground.
And action is being taken.
Have you seen why it is not theoretical? It must have an organized system, a multi-track approach that brings, because what you do with kinetics is to open the environment. Here they have the terrorists occupying a large space. Kinetic force can dislodge them in order to interpose that force. That force then begin to build peace. Why is this thing happening here consistently? Why have we not been able to uproot them? Is it the state structure they have? Is it the way they try to rebuild the state structure if we disrupt it? Is it the way they have, so many uncharted borders from where they get arms and so on?
But Prof, the truth of the matter is that a lot of people will say it's actually because of the failure of the current administration to manage some of these interest groups and all of that.
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
First and foremost, we're dealing with the conflict landscape first. If you can't even understand what the landscape looks like,
Who should?
how? Yes,
No, who should
the
understand?
government of the day.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying yes, if you can't understand that, there's no way you can begin to even understand the interplay of forces across the fault lines of the country. The problem this government has is being blind and insensitive to historical and cultural and demographic fault lines, even interfaith fault lines. And when you're blind to that or insensitive to that, you do not know the conflicts that are organic and the conflicts that are constructed. There are organic conflicts that must always be there, whether we build the best system or not,
Yes.
whether we have the best government or not.
But you can control it.
You can control and manage those
Yes.
ones. But inorganic conflicts or constructed conflicts are the conflicts which sometimes the elite may not spawn it, but the elite can create the space for it to occur. If you know that a lot of things could happen in the southeast and the south and the southwest, and because the people are angry and bitter, they feel marginalized. They feel they operate at the periphery. They feel their culture is under threat, their land is under threat. We mean the elite will keep quiet. And when the elite keep quiet, it emboldens conflict entrepreneurs, risk takers there to operate the way they're operating. So you have to begin to build some level of understanding, reaching common grounds led by the government. So when people talk about having series of dialogues, conflict mitigating dialogues, it is not to change the system, it's not regime change, it is not even restructuring, it's an immediate agenda that this country is cranking wide open. The fault lines are exploding, our government spaces are getting larger and larger.
We have never been this divided.
The future is not even given anymore. So we need to stem this slide to the precipice. And stemming the slide, you need to pause and take a deep breath. What do we do as a government leading a nation that is now fractured at all ends? Is to rebuild trust. When you rebuild trust and rebuild confidence and have an elite buy-in into what is going on in the country, you can begin to have escape routes for the nation.
Is there still escape route for this government to rebuild trust?
I'm not in government, so I'm not going to speak for
Because
government.
we have a few months to go.
I'm not, so I can't speak for government, but I do believe that why you have shows like this is to have a wider conversation, to reach a wider audience. Maybe somebody in government picks up the thoughts of Nnamdi and myself and say, this makes a lot of sense. We need to see the nation as one piece.
That's it.
And not see PDP or any party as a bit
That's it.
in a position, and not see this group or
Any
that group as,
religion, yeah.
yes, see the nation as one, even if we are not one. But you as a government elected in one day, one ballot, should
To oversee the affairs of this nation.
And in so doing there, you then become a transcendent force. You overcome the limitations of even their own ideology to see what the rest is
But
doing.
it seems that politicians have taken to politics now.
Beyond
They're
even
not discussing the interests of the
Beyond
nation
even
anymore.
that, one point you must understand too, has to do with what Karl Marx said 2 centuries or so ago. Religion and ethnicity, the opinion of the people. It is truer today than even maybe in his own time. Check Buhari's son's wedding. It's a cast not of the northern elite or jihadists. It's a cast of the fat cats. With close to 100 and something private jets, if the stories are true.
True,
From across the country.
Yes.
Now, have you seen the conference of the masses, the Margeries, the pure water seller in Onitsha Bridge, Head Bridge, and then the Lai in Lagos? No, you don't see that. So because there's a low level of consciousness, they are being perennially used by the elite. So the class approach, therefore, provides even a better understanding of the crisis of nationhood in Nigeria.
Let's go to 2023. In 1999, you were there.
I was there.
You were there. You were the secretary of
Alliance for Democracy.
Alliance for Democracy, AD. And it is also public that there was a gentleman agreement that power should rotate around the 6 geopolitical zone.
Sure.
That's what it is?
That's what it was then. It wasn't as if there was a specific meeting in a specific day. It was like a confluence of forces or convergence of forces. That those of us who came from Nadeko, Eastern Mande Union, and the struggle against the Badger, who believed that June 12 should be the annual, Abiola's mandate restored. Abiola died in detention in a tragic manner. Abacha soon died. The space was created. Surely, if I should tell you a story, that space was the best time to restructure. When there was no constitution, there was no parliament, there was nothing. But we missed that opportunity. It's a story for another day. The common understanding was then that power should move to the south to compensate for Abiola's lost mandate. So both the PDP that was the biggest party that was to produce the president eventually, and AD and APP understood this and worked towards that outcome. Mahmoud Waziri, chairman of APP, then myself, National Secretary of AD, played a crucial role in this direction, together with the leaders of my
So
party.
do we have that now?
Now,
Because
now
looking at the fourth line, the tension
you don't seem to have that now. My understanding is that by the moment the PDP and the APC, do their convention, elected convention for the party offices,
yes,
it becomes clearer whether that understanding is there across the two parties. APC maybe seem well tailored to meet up with power shift to the south, because the current president being an APC person, we have spent 8 years. From the north, it will look somehow morally awkward, if not untenable, for them to say power retains in the north. PDP has maybe much more flexible in the spectrum in terms of understanding how power shift works. Everybody believes it should be the southeast should have this term for this in 2023. History demands it. But the problem is that if you are a man searching for leaders and you don't find the leaders, either you create one among yourselves or you don't have a leader. If you have nobody in the southeast to step out and say, I'm going to bid for the presidency. I'm a P2P. I was a governor 2 times, but the running mate to the last candidate of the party. I would like to go for it, no matter the problems there. I'm going governor of Enugu State. I'm
former Senate President, SGF.
If you're not prepared to do it, there is always an article ready to go for it. There's a Bala Mohammed now with a lot of meetings in Bauchi, masses surging there. We want you to do it. He will tell you, I was a senator. I was a minister for 5 years. I am a current governor. I have legislative experience, bureaucratic experience, statewide experience. I'm ready for the job.
Power is not given.
Saraki is out there, locking in the shadows. You don't know whether it's central committees or contact groups. Tampo is ever a factor. So you and I, it's our duty to say, by November, by December, this year, not next year, put up or shut up. If you want to do it, don't creep around the shadows in the dark recesses of power and say somebody will give you power. Take a stand and build your structure. If you don't build a structure, there is an Atiku building structure. There's a Bala Mohammed building structure. There's a Saraki building structure. They are lossing for the presidency. It is their right to.
There's a Tinubu building structure.
If you don't build a structure, nobody will say you have a PAMPIEC, you have the CEFOP, you have the Igbo Development Leadership Development Foundation. They are working with the masses. They are revving the engine of power for you. Who is to wear the crown? So our preference would be a Southeast president or candidate who can go for it. Knowing fully well, like I said, there are elements in the North who are telling you that you've had Obasanjo for 8 years.
You've had 14 years, and we still have 4 years to go.
It's an argument you can topple. It's an argument you can counter. But if you're not there countering it and bringing your own people, not just the mass people, your own people spearheading it. The Bala Mohammed, the Tiku,
so your point,
we go for it.
Your point, sir, is that even though the gentleman agreement may be there, but nobody will give it to you.
You work for it.
That's it.
You struggle for it. If I tell you an interesting story, maybe I know the edition of Nigeria right now. Ezefe nearly won the nomination of AD against Falaye. It should have been Ezefe versus Prof Obasanjo. We have to walk around the class party leaders and say, no, the numbers may be there for Ezefe. People don't know this story. The only thing that somebody somewhere sat down in the room and elected Falaye. It's not true. I was secretary of the party. I have all the party records and documents. We had this strategic meeting in Abuja. People said, no, Ezefe, you may likely win this state special meeting here. But this is going to go to the southwest to compensate for Abiola's mandate. And being reasonable party people and being true believers of Nigeria then, real patriots, idealistic, we gave in to this kind of sentiment. We led it. Mahmoud Waziri made enemies of governors and leaders of APP for stifling the presidential aspiration of the party and locating his candidate in Shinkafi to work with Olufalaye. Even then, APP had a better chance of winning the presidency than us.
If the president were watching, or the government of the day, key players were watching, and that's Prof. What is he saying? What angles will you think you would advise that government can approach differently so that we can have at least a semblance of peace?
Organized social order.
Yes,
stable.
Yes. Before the election, because we can't go into the 2023 election in a chaotic environment.
Simple matter with simple expression. The president first inauguration, he made a very powerful statement. I'm for everybody. I
belong to everybody. I belong to nobody.
To nobody. Mr. President, 6 years down the line, many people do not believe he belonged to everybody. They think he belonged to somebody. The moment you go back to that founding spirit of your first inauguration, that you belong to everybody, half of our problems are solved. Perception is sometimes more powerful than politics,
True.
than reality.
True.
Mr. President.
True.
If the people perceive there's a favoritism in your government, some level of narrowing of this ethnic agenda or religious agenda, you must dispel it, and powerfully so. If you do so, you are calming the nerves of the nation. We can then pick the pieces of our broken lives and march on to 2023. That's my advice to the president. But the governors and other leaders, you are elected by the people. Go back to the social contract you signed with them, whether it's a full document or whether it is in principle that you made promises. Honor those promises. That's what accountability and good governance. That's what they mean. For the people themselves.
The legislators, I need to, because we would have touched the issue of
for the
electronic transmission of results and all of yes.
Laws are not made for the moment to please the proclivities of the moment or to please the agenda of those who are making the law. Laws are made for the future, in anticipation that this is what society will look like in 10, 15, 20 years or 100 years, even 200 years to come. So you don't make a law because it is convenient to you, inconvenient to you. This law on electronic, voting, is a law that was inconvenient to some people. But such inconvenient laws are necessary for building, to have the building blocks of democracy and building blocks of trust of the electoral system to ensure that at the end of the day, the outcome of our elections are trusted not only by Nigerians, but by the world.
To the Nigerian people.
For the Nigerian people, time and history constrains everybody, including Buhari and his government. When people realize that this government has 8 years, 4 years, people can begin to take a step back.
Few months to go.
There's no vacuum, really, because my understanding is there's a vacuum of the mind, a philosophical problem. And say, we have to die, finish it all now, or else we all die tomorrow. Surely not. The constitution constraints, history constraints, time limit constraints. Whether Buhari likes it or not, he must leave 2023. And when people realize it, say, take a step back, take a deep breath and begin now to walk much more slower towards a better pan-national outcome than working at a furious pace that could destroy the country. Finally, for the Southeast, whether PDP or APC, get the men and women ready for presidency 2023. If you don't, for example, in the AP, for the PDP, an Atiku is looking in the shadows. Bala Mohammed is out there, visibly telling you, I'm ready for it anytime it happens. Saraki is not to be taken for granted. Please, this is a very potent statement for us today. Step out to do it. If you don't step out to do it, let the people know in time so you don't deceive them tomorrow.
Prof, thank you very much, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. I really do appreciate you.
Thank you.
And today we have not just come here for an interview, we have come to learn. And I'm very certain that those who are at home or wherever they are watching would have picked a lot from you. I hope the government of the day, particularly Mr. President, this is the greatest advice, Mr. President. You belong to everybody and not to some people or to anybody. That's the only way we can fix this rancor that is going on in our country today. For the politicians, you've heard from Prof, who cannot have election without an organized environment. The people have a role to play. And so you, the people out there elsewhere, don't play the ostrich. You have a role to play. This country belongs to all of us. And to get it right, all of us must come to the table of negotiation, having equity in mind, having justice in mind, and fairness. I'll see you next week when we come back on this same show, Nigeria Right Now.